Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
It is one of those peculiar beauties of the American system that the last day of an outgoing president is the same as the first day of an incoming president. So until say noontime, it is the outgoing president, so Donald Trump could pardon whoever he wanted. So he took no chances, pardoned a whole bunch of his aides, so they will not be charged with anything going ahead. Biden, on the other hand, the moment he was sworn in, he became president and he lost no time also, which usually happens when you have a polarized election, because you set up an election against the incumbent's policies in such a sharp manner that you make promises to come and rescind his policies on day one or to fulfill your promises on day one. In our country, you find that chief ministers say, I will waive off farm loans, and they come to power, and the first day immediately after the swearing in, they do so. So something like that happened on Biden's first day at work also. He issued 17 major executive orders on his first day, in fact, which was only half a day at work, because it was after the swearing in celebrations and the show on Capitol Hill. So what were these executive orders? You will see the list on the screen. Now there are two categories of these executive orders, and these are executive orders, these are orders to his agencies, they are also presidential memos, but 17 in all. Now 9 of these are distinct from the remaining 8, and these 9 are distinct in the sense that these reverse Donald Trump's policies. In fact, these reverse some of Donald Trump's most divisive and controversial policies, from environment to immigration to health, coronavirus, etc., etc. Now we are listing these 9. We are not going into all 17 because some of those are more relevant to America, but these 9 and these are very important, and some in particular have significance for India. Now number 1 of the reversal policies that have been reversed. Number 1, Trump had walked out of WHO, saying that they were controlled by China. Now, so many people around the world had said, even I had said editorially, I had said personally and editorially, that this is wrong, that just because you think China is dominating WHO or other UN agencies, the answer is not to do cutty with the UN agencies and go away. The answer is to make your presence stronger. The answer is to counter China's influence there rather than leaving the ground open for China. So the first policy of Trump's that Biden changes now is that he is going to go back to WHO, and likely within a month. Not just that, he has appointed Dr. Anthony Fauci, to lead the team to WHO now to do the sort of repair work, but I hope so that while they do it, they also ask WHO some tough questions. WHO is now sending a team, has now sent a team to China to investigate what happened, and the team is saying that China was late in informing the world about the threat of the pandemic. But the fact is that people will also then dig out this tweet from WHO, this infamous tweet that said on 14th of January 2020 that the evidence of human to human transmission of the virus wasn't there. So while America should re-enter WHO and not leave it all to Chinese domination, because you need balance and you also need the Chinese power to be countered, that's a very good idea, but it doesn't mean that you should not raise the hard questions about WHO's performance over this year and also WHO bosses' performance. Those are important points. So this is happening. The second thing, again very important for India, even more important than WHO, America is going back to the Paris Climate Accord. Now Paris Climate Accord, we'll talk about this in detail at some point, but basically sets the limits on carbon emissions, on how much increase in global temperatures can be allowed. So at a time when there is a global emergency with climate change, glaciers are melting, icebergs are melting, the polar region is melting, the world is in a deep crisis. At this point, Trump, who for the longest time was a climate change denier, had withdrawn America from it, saying that this entails too much of a sacrifice or a price to be paid by America. We don't want it. Let others fend for themselves, which had caused a big setback to the global push to slow down climate change, or hopefully to reverse it or block it at some point. It also affected countries like India badly, because per capita emissions in a country like India, even China, but a country like India, are way lower. They are a fraction of what they are in developed countries. And yet countries like ours are now under pressure to control our emissions, not burn coal, not to build more industry, etc., etc. So if a country like India, such a giant country like India, has to give up its addiction or its reliance on coal and even oil, fossil fuels, and move on to cleaner fuels, either renewable, solar, wind, etc., or nuclear, which is very clean but very expensive, then can India do it, or a country like India do it all by itself? So Paris Climate Accord would have brought in some help, some sharing of that expense, and would have enabled even countries like India, which need to increase their energy consumption on per capita basis, hopefully, ideally, without accordingly increasing carbon emissions on per capita basis. So it's a good thing that Biden is going back there, Trump is going back to Florida, Biden is going back to Paris to climate change accord, and it's also good, as we know, that he has appointed John Kerry, a very powerful czar on climate change. So that is the other big change. The third thing he has done is to stop work on Keystone XL pipeline that Trump had cleared. In fact, Trump had cleared at every stage to allow it. There was a 10-year agitation against this pipeline. In 2015, Obama had ruled against it, but Trump came in and he allowed it, and he was supporting it at every step. So what is Keystone XL pipeline? Keystone XL pipeline starts, say, in Alberta in Western Canada, and from there it brings a large amount of crude oil, or in fact not even a crude oil, but a crude oil substitute, a kind of crude oil which is described as the most polluting fossil fuel in the world. These are tar sands. So tar sands are like a gooey substance, a bit like a lot of sort of semi-liquid bitumen. If you've seen coal tar, which is used for making roads, it's a bit like that. So you have these thick tar sands which are found, enormous amounts of found under what is called as boreal forests of Alberta. Big forests. Under those forests are these tar sands lying. In fact, this pipeline and bringing in tar sands through pipelines is not the same as bringing crude oil through pipelines. These were to be specialized pipelines, and these tar sands would then be brought to Texas and other places in America, and you will see a map that we've taken from Keystone XL's website. These tar sands will be brought to these refineries in America. From there, these will be either used in America or they will be sold or exported outside of America. So Keystone stands for, what does Keystone mean? It means that you make a bridge between the producer, that is Alberta, and the consumer or the market, that is America, Texas, or then exports from there. And what is a keystone? Keystone is the most important stone when you construct a bridge. That's why Keystone. And Keystone XL, XL means Keystones Exports Limited. So this was very important for Canadian economy, particularly in Alberta. It's a province which has 11% unemployment. In fact, I'm sharing with you a story that we've run today on the print from Bloomberg, telling you exactly why Biden's cancellation of this Keystone XL is a gut punch. That the expression Bloomberg has used. It's a gut punch to Justin Trudeau, because Justin Trudeau's politics rides on this Keystone pipeline working. Now this is, you can now go into the arguments over Canadian liberalism or hypocrisy, etc., but that's an argument for another day. Trudeau's government had a big stake in this Keystone pipeline, and there they were grateful, in fact, that Trump administration, with which they had enormous differences, uh, even cosmetically and optically, which was very important for Trudeau's image. Even then, they were working with the Trump administration. This is a big setback to them, and this will have consequences going ahead. You want to understand how big this would be? This would have been. This would have taken 8,30,000 barrels of tar sands every day from Alberta to the refinery in America. This would have taken 168 billion barrels equivalent of tar sands. That's more than the oil today available or discovered in Iraq, for example. That much would have been taken away from Alberta to these refineries, from the producer to the market. Would have changed the global oil markets, but would have also ruined one, global climate, but also would have cut through many environmentally sensitive zones in Canada and in America. And how big the pipeline is, I can tell you, is 2,687 miles or 4,324 kilometers. You want to understand this in perspective? See, Srinagar to Trivandrum may be the longest drive that you will have in India, or longest flight you will have in India, is 3,678 kilometers. Porbandar to Agartala is about 3,500. Porbandar, say to the other end of Arunachal Pradesh, Tirap corridor is about 3,700. So you can see how long this pipeline is. That has now been stopped, and that will have a major impact. Fourth is on census, which is more internal to America. What Trump had said was that non-citizens will not be counted in American census. That Biden has restored. It's a bit like there will be an echo there of the Indian CAA/census/NRC, but that is something that we will sort of expand on going ahead in days or weeks to come. Then Trump had banned entry of passport holders from 7 Muslim countries. That has been completely reversed by Biden through an executive order. Similarly, Trump had started expanding the immigration policing all over America. Biden has reversed that also. He stopped it. He stopped the money being spent on the wall along the Mexican border. So what happens to the wall that's already been built, we don't know. Maybe it will just remain a monument to Trump's madness and failure in this area, and maybe it will become a place where people go to have picnics now. But that Mexico wall is now over, at least for the period when Biden is in power. And then there is something that we don't understand very well and probably don't need to. Some of Trump's relaxation of market regulation has now been reversed. And then there is something very interesting, and I find it fascinating. That is, he has wound up, on his first day, he has wound up what is called as Trump's 1776 commission. Now, what is 1776? Now, I know all of you are smart people, you know that was the year that America became independent. So it was on 4th of July 1776 that America became independent, or Declaration of Independence was signed. It just so happens that a few hundred years after that I got married. Now, what is the issue there? The issue is, from when does America's history start? So, the New York Times before that had started a project called Project 1619. Now, why is 1619 important in America's history? Because that was the year, sometime in August 1619, that the first black slaves from Africa arrived at a place called Jamestown in Virginia. So, that is when the American slavery began. So, there are those who said, look, if you want to write the real history of America, don't write it from the day we became independent, that is from Britain. You should start the history from the day this other big immigration from Africa started, although that is the history of slavery and America should not hide from that. Trump and his people said that that is revisionist history. What you are doing is, you are maligning our founding fathers by calling them hypocrites. Hypocrites why? For defending slavery, because when they took power, slavery was a part of life in America. So you cannot judge them today for what they might have done or how they might have seen slavery from 1619 onwards. So this commission, it was set up in December. In fact, Trump announced it just 2 days before the voting day. He came up with the idea in September. He expanded the idea in October. He announced the commission 2 days before the election, the voting day in November, early November. Then the commission was set up, and the commission also gave its report. These things happened in express time on 18th of January, which is also the Martin Luther King Jr. Day in America. So also the supreme irony of this was that this kind of a report was published, was released on Martin Luther King Day. Now, what did this report say? This is really fascinating because this has great relevance also to many debates that go on in India all the time, pre-Muslim, past Muslim. So why did Trump set up this commission? That's important to understand. So Trump said in his own words, the left has warped, distorted and defiled the American story. We want our sons and daughters to know they are the citizens of a most exceptional nation in the world. So that was part of his Make America Great Again, by not going back beyond 1776, keeping it at 1776, or maybe beginning at 1788 instead, when the American Constitution was adopted. So he didn't want that. Now, what did this commission say? Among the interesting things or important things this commission said, I will quote a couple. They said their charge, that is the liberals' charge, is untrue, that the founding fathers were hypocrites for supporting slavery. Their charge is untrue and has done enormous damage, especially in recent years, with a devastating effect on our civic unity and social fabric. You hear these lines often in India as well. Then they go on to say, many Americans labor under the illusion that slavery was somehow a uniquely American evil. It's like saying, "Arey, some equivalent of caste system was found in every society in the world, so why are you feeling defensive that we have caste system in India?" It's an exact parallel. So many Americans labor under the illusion that slavery was somehow a uniquely American evil. Then they go on to say, unfortunate fact is that the institution of slavery has been more the rule than the exceptions through human history. Now that is really finding retrospective justification for slavery, because something that is bad, something that is bad was bad, something that was bad remains bad, but they don't want that. They call it revisionist history. So they say, in fact, that this is historical revisionism, trampling honest scholarship and historical truth, slams Americans by highlighting only the sins of their ancestors, and teaches claims of systemic racism that can only be eliminated by even more discrimination. So it's like somebody in India saying that, so what if casteism took place, and so what if there was untouchability? To talk about this and to blame our ancestors for having indulged in this, and to try and fix it through affirmative action, or say through job and academic institution reservations, is like answering discrimination with further discrimination. So this is the exact parallel of that argument. You know how much sympathy will that argument find in India. And then they go on to say that this is an ideology intended to manipulate opinion more than educate mind. So Trump set up this commission, which was to reverse all this, teach Americans patriotism. America in 21st century was trying to teach its people patriotism, and the commission was headed by his ally Larry Arnn, who's an academic on the right, and a right-wing TV analyst, famous or infamous depending on which side you are, Carol Swain. So I can name you, or you can name one like that from Indian TV anytime, you know, mustache or not. Do you really want those people now to start to set up to run a commission to decide how Indians will be educated about patriotism now? On the other hand, what has Biden done? Biden has brought in Susan Rice, the former National Security Advisor in the Democratic administration. She has been brought in now as the head of White House Domestic Policy Council, and she'll be working with all agencies of the federal government to bring in racial equity instead. So exactly what this commission caused, answering discrimination with discrimination. Biden has put the clock back on that argument. In my view, that's a very good step.